Welcome to this lecture on evolutionary biology. Today, we are going to explore the unique hominin characteristics that define our evolutionary path. Imagine standing in a zoo and looking at a chimpanzee. While we share many similarities, our physical structures and ways of moving are fundamentally different. Understanding these specific traits is like reading a biological history book that explains exactly how we became human. Let us dive in. Now that we have introduced the topic, let us define exactly what a hominin is. In evolutionary biology, the term hominin refers to a very specific group. It includes us, modern humans, as well as all of our extinct immediate ancestors who lived after our lineage split from chimpanzees millions of years ago. Why does this classification matter? Because it helps us isolate the exact anatomical and cognitive shifts that make us uniquely human. By studying this specific group, scientists can trace the step-by-step biological changes that transformed a tree-dwelling ape into a creature capable of building civilizations. Building on our definition of hominins, let us look at their most defining feature. The earliest and most significant trait that separates hominins from other apes is obligate bipedalism. This simply means walking upright on two legs as the primary and natural form of movement, rather than running on all fours. This was not just a minor change in posture, it was a massive evolutionary leap. Walking on two legs freed up the hands, allowing our ancestors to carry food, hold tools, and eventually shape their environment. It is the foundational physical adaptation upon which all other human traits were built. Following the development of bipedalism, we see other major physical transformations. The next critical shift is encephalization, which is a dramatic increase in brain size compared to overall body mass. This larger brain paved the way for complex thought and language. Alongside the brain, hominin mouths changed significantly. Unlike other apes that have large, sharp canines for fighting or display, hominins developed much smaller canine teeth and thicker enamel for chewing tough foods. Furthermore, the shape of the jaw, known as the dental arch, transitioned from a rectangular shape to a gently curving parabolic or U shape, which is exactly what you see when you look in a mirror today. Understanding these physical changes leads us to an important question. Why do paleontologists care so much about these specific traits? When scientists dig up a new fossil, these characteristics act as a strict diagnostic checklist. For example, if a skull has a hole at the base, called the foramen magnum, pointing straight down, scientists instantly know the creature walked upright. Beyond identifying fossils, these traits explain our own bodies today. Walking upright with a massive brain created evolutionary trade-offs. It is the exact reason why modern humans frequently suffer from lower back pain and experience much more difficult childbirth compared to other mammals. Now that we understand what these traits are, let us look at how scientists actually measure them in the field. To scientifically determine how an extinct animal moved, biologists cannot just guess by looking at scattered bone fragments. They need a highly reliable, quantitative way to compare the limb proportions of different species. By using mathematical ratios, scientists can definitively categorize a fossil. They can prove whether a creature was a tree-swinging primate with long arms, a knuckle-walking ape, or an upright-walking hominin with long legs. This mathematical approach removes the guesswork from evolutionary biology. This need for a quantitative measure brings us to our first mathematical tool. The intermembral index is a ratio that compares the length of the arms to the length of the legs. Let us break down the formula. IMI stands for the intermembral index, which is always expressed as a percentage. L-arm represents the total length of the forelimb, calculated by adding the upper and lower arm bones. L-leg represents the total length of the hind limb, adding the thigh and shin bones. Physically, if the arm length increases relative to the leg, the index goes over 100, indicating a tree-swinging animal. If the leg length increases, the index drops well below 100, which is the classic signature of a bipedal hominin. Before we move on, let us see this formula in action with a concrete example. Imagine you unearth a fossil. You are given the arm bone lengths of 28 and 22 centimeters and the leg bone lengths of 45 and 35 centimeters. We need to find the intermembral index to determine how it moved. First, we add the arm bones to get a total arm length of 50 centimeters. Next, we add the leg bones to get a total leg length of 80 centimeters. We chose this formula because it directly compares these two functional lengths. Dividing 50 by 80 and multiplying by 100 gives us 62.5%. Because this is significantly lower than 100, it physically proves the creature relied on long, strong legs for walking upright. Just as we quantified walking, we must also quantify intelligence. Another defining characteristic of hominins is our exceptionally large brain. However, simply putting a brain on a scale is not enough to determine cognitive advancement. Why? Because larger animals naturally have larger brains just to control their massive bodies. For instance, an elephant has a much larger brain than a human, yet humans possess higher cognitive abilities. To truly understand intelligence, evolutionary biologists cannot look at absolute size. Instead, they must measure how much bigger or smaller a species' brain is compared to what we would mathematically expect for an average animal of that exact same body size. This concept of relative brain size leads us to the encephalization quotient. This formula comes from allometric scaling laws that predict organ size based on body weight. Let us define the symbols. EQ represents the encephalization quotient, which has no units. M actual is the real measured brain mass of the species in grams. M expected is the predicted brain mass for a typical mammal of that exact same body weight. Physically, if a species has an EQ equal to 1, its brain is exactly the expected size. As the actual brain mass increases relative to the expected mass, the EQ rises above 1. A higher EQ indicates that extra brain tissue is available for complex cognitive tasks rather than just basic body maintenance. Let us apply this formula to understand the cognitive leap in an early hominin known as Homo habilis. We are given fossil evidence showing an actual brain mass of 600 grams. Based on the body size of this individual, the standard mammalian equation predicts an expected brain mass of only 150 grams. We want to calculate the EQ to see how advanced they were. We use the EQ formula to find the ratio of actual to expected mass. Dividing 600 by 150 gives us exactly 4.0. This final answer physically means that Homo habilis had a brain 4 times larger than a typical mammal of its size, providing mathematical evidence for their unique ability to invent and use stone tools. Now that we have mathematically proven these adaptations, let us visualize them. On screen, you are looking at a direct skeletal comparison between a human and a chimpanzee. Notice the red arrows highlighting key engineering solutions for walking upright. At the top, the human skull balances perfectly because the foramen magnum is centrally located at the bottom, whereas the chimpanzee's is toward the back. Moving down, look at the pelvis. The human pelvis is short and bowl-shaped to support internal organs while standing, unlike the long, flat ape pelvis. Finally, observe the legs. The human femur angles inward, known as the valgus angle, keeping our feet under our center of gravity. The chimpanzee femur drops straight down. This diagram beautifully illustrates the mechanical reality of hominin evolution. To wrap up our lecture, let us review the most important takeaways. First, the shift to obligate bipedalism was the crucial first step. By walking upright, our ancestors freed their hands for tool use, which created an evolutionary pressure for greater intelligence. Second, this pressure resulted in massive encephalization, giving hominins the large brains required for complex cognitive tasks. Finally, we learned that these evolutionary changes are not just qualitative observations. They are mathematically quantifiable through precise metrics, like the intermembral index and the encephalization quotient. You have now covered the fundamental characteristics that define the hominin lineage, giving you a deep mechanical understanding of how we evolved into modern humans.